The Saudis consider ditching the US dollar as the current trade source and current global benchmark for the price of oil, and instead think about going back to the yuan. So we'll talk just a bit about what that means. And by the way, I had to research that to see what that was supposed to mean before we got started here, because I'm going to be completely honest with you, I didn't know. In other news, Russia put sanctions on Clinton's, Biden's, Psaki, and a number of other people, and Psaki can do nothing but tell jokes about it. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Influencers cry out as Instagram's ban starts to hurt their careers over in Russia, so we'll go over a little bit of what's going on with that. And prosecutors detail Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio having plans to storm the Capitol, even though it wasn't on January 6th. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I'll admit, when I was getting started here, I got everything organized and I sat down. I looked at the Saudi Arabia thing and I'm like, I don't know what this means. Now that I actually researched it, I know that it could be pretty devastating, especially given the fact that we're in a free-fall mode for inflation. There we go. Wow. Boy, my mind is sure going off of here. Man, am I going to be glad if they actually keep this daylight savings thing into effect here. It's never as bad once we go into the fall, but it shakes a lot of people up, myself included, as we lose the hour of sleep coming into spring. But we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, I looked over at the clock while I'm sitting here reading this article, trying to figure out why the US dollar is the standard in oil, which I kind of knew that already, but what this whole thing means if that goes away, and it's a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. So we're going to talk a bit about that, and I may quote from a wiki article. What is this? Investopedia.com. I might quote a little bit from that just to let you know why it is that this is actually bad, because again, I looked at this and I'm like, why is this bad? The oil is the same no matter what it gets traded in, but now I understand that this is what replaced essentially the gold standard around the world on the US dollar. Now I understand. Now I get a little bit more of it. Not completely. I don't get it completely, but I'm sure that you guys in the chat will fill me in too. So we'll talk about that. We'll get started once we get down to that point. But we got to get onto it here because, again, I looked at the clock while I'm reading this article. Oh, man, it's 7:39. I should have been started 10 minutes ago, but let's get into it. Let's get started. But before we do, make sure you guys go check out TurnsOfPagesProductions.com. TurnsOfPagesProductions.com, once we get launched, will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We are set to carry great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Porch Boys, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and a new upcoming show with Britt and Sean Hickman. On top of that, we do have a surprise show that's going to be coming up at launch as well. So they've been briefed. They know what's coming off of that. And we do have the Give, Set, Go up there. I have not publicized it yet. Those of you who are in the know already know. But because of the name docs that's on there, I'm definitely going to be publicizing that coming up in April. I am supposed to be on Brian Nichols coming up in the beginning of April, in just a few weeks. And at that point, I'm going to name docs. I'm going to outline what we want to do with the website, where we want to go with that, how we want to organize it, and how we want to get the news by the common man for the common man. But yes, on air, on a much bigger show than mine, I'm also going to name docs. I'm going to let my name be out there. because Give, Send, Go tells me I have to have it up on the webpage. So if you guys want to check it out, those of you who are in the know, givesendgo.com/turns of pages 101, go and check that out. And yes, once the name is out there, I'm going to be hoping that all of the other creators will start to put the word out there as well for it. So that's what we see off of that. turnsofpagesproductions.com, go check that out. Let's look in at the finance before we start losing our hegemony with the US dollar. Let's get the live chat up here so I can see you. Just maybe in case I didn't have my microphone on or something. All right, let's look in at this. The Dow is sitting at 33,544.34 points. That is up 599.1 points, or 1.82%. So just a little bit shy of 2% on the upswing right now, as gas is starting to come down. Because the Brent is starting to come down. The futures are looking like they are up as well because, again, Brent crude oil, the global benchmark, is under $100 a barrel again. So that might undo some of the damage that the Russian invasion has caused. We will see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's have a look at the Bitcoin. We'll be talking a lot about Bitcoin too, because there's more talk about that as well. Bitcoin in the last 24 hours had a major spike and then a drop off to exactly the same point that it was. And then it looks like it did try to claw its way back in the early morning hours, ending itself right now at 40,599 US dollars and 10 US cents. That is up 1,301 US dollars, or 3.31% over its previous. So that's what we see off of that. Looking at your tangible assets, copper up, steel up, and aluminum is down. So a little bit on the opposite of what we saw yesterday. Looking in at your individual plays. Bare bright copper wire is up, copper tubing is up, number one. Number one flashing copper is up, but number two tubing is down. Insulated copper wire is down. THHN wire is up. Romex is up. Brass is up, but brass shells are down. On your steel, conduit steel is down, light iron is up, number one steel is up, cast iron is up, rotors are up, complete car is up, shreddable steel is up, stainless is down. On aluminum, siding is up, aluminum copper fin is down, radiators are down, aluminum cans are up, sheet aluminum is up, rims are down. On your individual plays, electric motors are down, ballasts are down, lead is down, but batteries are up. Catalytic converters are now mixed. Small foreign cat is down. Large foreign cat is up. Regular domestic cat is down. Large GM cat is down, rather. And small GM cat is up. Compressors are down. Alternators are up. Carbide is up. So bring in your drill bits. Hard drives are down. Motherboards are up. Power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC tower are all down. So much more mixed. Much more individual. I mean, for a while we were just saying, hey, all copper's up, all aluminum's up except for this one thing. All steel is up right now, but the markets have started to level off as production starts to level off as well. We'll see what happens with that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures jump, what to do after Tuesday's stock market surge. Fed set to hike interest rates, from Scott Latonin. Dow futures were sharply higher Wednesday after the Tuesday stock market surge. The Federal Reserve's interest rate decision is due out Wednesday afternoon. The Russia-Ukraine war remains a key focal point on the stock market today. Backing up here, if Saudi Arabia goes back and jumps over to the Yuan, and the interest rate hikes hit at the same time, that I think is going to get ugly, based on what I now know about the dollar and the oil price. Well, U.S. oil prices fell below $95 a barrel on Tuesday. Investors need patience and discipline right now, keeping the cash mostly on the sidelines to see if the new market rally attempt can signal a new uptrend. Dow Health Care giant United Health, Costco, and O'Reilly Auto Parts, because people are fixing their own cars instead of buying again, are among those holding up well in the current stock market volatility. On Tuesday, the Dow Industrial Average advanced 1.8%, while the S&P rose 2.1%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ surged 2.9%. The NASDAQ and the S&P snapped three-day losing streaks. Among the Dow leaders, Apple rallied 3% and Microsoft traded up 3.9% in today's stock market rally. United Health, a Dow Jones stock to watch, finished Tuesday just below a new buy point. EV leader Tesla raced more than 4.5% higher Tuesday after announcing price hikes for its cars. Really? Usually when you jack the price up on something, fewer people can buy it, especially when their wages don't rise up to match. That's interesting. Amid the volatile, headline-driven market, Costco, O'Reilly, Regeneron, and Vertex are among Tuesday's top stocks to watch. Keep in mind that current stock market conditions should keep investors in cash and on the sidelines. Microsoft, Tesla, Vertex are on the IBD leaderboard. O'Reilly was Tuesday's IBD 50 stocks to watch pick, and Costco and Regeneron were featured in this week's Stocks Nearby Zone column. Before Wednesday's market open, Dow jumped 1.1% versus fair value, S&P 500 futures moved up 1.3%, and NASDAQ futures rose 1.9%. Remember, overnight action in the Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session among ETFs. NASDAQ 100 tracker Invesco QQQ Trust jumped 3.1%, and the SPDR S&P climbed 2.2% on Tuesday. The 10-year yield rose back up over 2% to 2.16% to hit its highest point since July of 2019. On Monday, the 10-year yield surged 2.14%. U.S. oil prices plunged more than 7% Tuesday as West Texas Intermediate crude traded around $95 a barrel. Dow energy giant Chevron tumbled more than 5%, but still sharply above the 20 to 25% profit-taking area from a CUP's base 113.21 entry. The Reserve's two-day meeting will end Wednesday with an interest rate decision at 2 p.m. Expectations call for the central bank to raise the interest rates by 0.25 percentage point, which could be the first increase since 2018. Go half. You won't do it. You don't have the balls. So that's what we see coming back up out of that. Let's grab one from Fox Business, and then we will start in with some of the big news of the day. From Fox Business, Dow jumped 600 points, oil slides to $96, off 27% from the peak. No author given. U.S. stocks picked up momentum in the final hour of trading as crude prices retreated and investors eyed the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The Dow Industrial Average gained 600 points, or 1.8%, while the S&P rose 2% and the NASDAQ 3%. Crude's slide continued on Tuesday, with oil hitting $96.44 a barrel, now off 27% from the peak 130 hit last week. Brent, the global benchmark, fell to $99.91 as fears rise around China's new Pinkpox outbreak. Gold also retreated to $1,928 and 50 US cents. And that's one of the things. I look at that, and I look at where we were at last year, both with the projection of what could possibly be coming off the Keystone, because as a lot of people are reminded, the Keystone was not ready. It was not done. And it was not transporting a single drop of oil last year when we talked about it. Or 2 years ago, rather, when we started talking about it. It hadn't finished, and Biden went back and shut it down. The low prices were both from the fact that the oil companies were drilling on U.S. land with lower restrictions, but more importantly, on the projection of what was coming back up off the Keystone. But to take that further, if we were coming to a point where we were getting the majority of our oil from ourselves and exporting some of our oil, I wouldn't say we have to go and export all of it, but export some of it back out, we wouldn't have to worry about whether or not China is going to affect the global benchmark. Just saying. Gas remained at $4.31 level per AAA. It is... I haven't gone, because I usually just go directly from work to home. It doesn't involve me going into the city, but I haven't gone out and seen what gas is in Janesville. I know it's $3.99 here in town, so that's what we see off of that. But there we go. That's what we see off the finance. Let's get into the big news of the day, and we are going to start today with Tampa Bay 10. Senate passes Rubio's bill to make daylight savings time permanent nationwide. From 10 Tampa Bay and the Associated Press, no author given. The U.S. Senate on Tuesday unanimously passed the Sunshine Protection Act, which would make the daylight savings time permanent next year across the country, a major priority for Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio. The bipartisan measure now heads to the House for consideration. Rubio has long advocated for ending the tedious clock setting and pushed for making daylight savings time year-round and nationwide. In other words, we'd switch once and then stay there. There'd be no more changing the clocks twice a year going forward. The bill still needs to pass the House and be signed by the President to become law. I'm hoping that after today, this will go over to the House. They'll act quickly on it. I know that this is not the most important issue confronting America, but it's one of those issues where there's a lot of agreement. And I think a lot of people wonder why it took so long to get here. Rubio said Tuesday on the Senate floor. Below is a video of Rubio speaking after the passage in the Senate.
Let me cut right to the chase here before we get into statements. As of in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation be discharged from further consideration of S-623, a bill to make daylight saving time permanent, and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
S-623, a bill to make daylight saving time permanent and for other purposes.
Objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the committee is discharged, and the Senate will proceed.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Rubio substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam President. And as the day goes on, I look forward to others will be coming to the floor here in a moment. You'll see it's an eclectic collection of members of the United States Senate in favor of what we've just done here in the Senate, and that's to pass a bill to make a daylight savings time permanent. Just this past weekend, we all went through that biannual ritual of changing the clock back and forth and the disruption that comes with it. And one has to ask themselves after a while, why do we keep doing it? Why are we doing this? This really began back in 1918 as a practice that was supposed to save energy. And since then, we've adjusted it. Today, daylight savings time, which started out as 6 months, was extended to 8 months in 2005, clearly showing you where people's preference were. So we're doing this back and forth of clock changing for about 16 weeks of standard time a year. Now, I think the majority of the American people's preference is just to stop the back and forth changing. And then, but beyond that, I think their preference is, certainly at least based on today's vote and what we've heard, is to make daylight savings time permanent. And I'll just tell you a couple of the reasons why I think that's important. There's some strong science behind it that is now showing and making people aware of the harm that clock switching has. We see an increase in heart attacks and car accidents and pedestrian accidents.
So, and I mean, these are all some of the same arguments that have been made about daylight savings time for quite a while. It's one of the things that we look at. Not so much in the fall, like I had said before at the top of the show. Because usually in the fall, it's like, oh, cool, I'm going to go get drunk more. Well, okay, maybe that does cause a little bit more car accidents. But yeah, I always remember looking forward to this. And what is it, usually October when they do it? When they fall back? Because they typically do it around 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought it was 1. Was it 1? I thought it used to be 1, but I guess it's 2 now this year. But I'd always look forward to, having the clock change while I'm at the bar at 2 when they're about to call last call. I'm like, hey, cool, I've got another hour to drink right now. So that in and of itself may have caused some more accidents. But I mean, for the most part, you get up, you start off in November, you're more alert. Because it's your body thinks it's an hour later than it actually is. Whereas when you're sitting here at a situation like this, your body thinks it's an hour earlier than it is. And while I'm, for the most part, getting to the point where I'm used to it again, it gets to be a little bit rough as we go. So that's what we see off of that. Does this pass? Probably. I don't know why this, as Rubio said, why this hasn't passed long ago, because we're at a situation, especially given the fact that we're on a 24-hour cycle at this point where people are working. This isn't the 9-to-5 world anymore. Or the world where the majority of the world is just operating but in the daylight hours, like it used to be, because this was set up for farmers. So this is what we have off of that. That's what we go with that for that. Let's move on. So this is what I wanted to talk about and what I was researching before we got started here. We'll read a tweet thread from Richard Medhurst, and then we'll go with an article from The Hill talking about this as well. Breaking, Saudi Arabia is considering settling oil sales to China, not in US dollars, but in Chinese yuan. The decline of US hegemony is in full swing. This is exactly what we meant by the West shooting itself in the foot. This is just the beginning. Medhurst goes on and says the U.S. sanctioned Russian oil imports, prices going wild, and the West needs a replacement. Biden is going crawling back to Maduro, but can't do anything in his own country. Meanwhile, the Saudis and Emirates won't even pick up the phone. Have you ever heard of such a thing? You have now. Right now, India is considering buying Russian crude and other commodities at a discount. Pakistan bought 2 million tons of wheat and gas the other day, the day of the offensive. And yet the West keeps insisting the international community is united against Russia. Obviously it isn't. No, it is not. It absolutely is not. And that's where we're coming out and people keep saying World War III. To listen to Biden, and this will go into some of the Russia stuff too, to listen to Biden, to listen to Psaki, to listen to CNN, and MSDNC, and NBC, and even Fox to an extent, the world is united completely against Russia, and that's not the case. The entire world comes together to condemn Russia. No, it's the European Union and the US. Everyone else is just looking to see what they can do to do well by their people. Medhurst concludes by saying, don't forget, Iran nuclear deal was close to being done, meaning Iranian oil back on the market, prices stabilizing. I don't necessarily agree with that, I'm sorry. Russia suddenly asked for a guarantee to protect its ties with Iran, giving it the upper hand. I covered many things in this thread here. And then he's got a video there we're actually not going to watch. But, I mean, this is, from what I understand, and again, I just learned about this today, and why this happens the way that it is, this is pretty devastating to the U.S. economy if this happens the way that it looks like it's going to. Reading from The Hill, by the way, just keep in mind, there is no decision made yet. Reading from The Hill, Saudi Arabia reportedly considering accepting yuan instead of dollar for oil sales. From Zach Berdrick. Saudi and Chinese officials are in talks to price some of the Gulf's national oil sales in yuan rather than dollars or euros. The Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday, citing people familiar with the matter. The two nations have intermittently discussed the matter for 6 years, but talks have reportedly stepped up in 2022, with Riyadh disgruntled over the U.S. nuclear negotiations with Iran and its lack of backing for Saudi Arabia's military operation in neighboring Yemen. Nearly 80% of global oil sales are priced in dollars, and since the mid-70s, the Saudis have exclusively used the dollar for trading as part of the security agreement with the U.S. government, according to the Journal. The talks are the latest in an ongoing effort by Beijing both to make its currency tradable in international oil markets and to strengthen its relationship with the Saudis specifically. China previously aided Riyadh in construction of ballistic missiles and consultation on nuclear power. Conversely, the Saudi-US relationship has been increasingly frayed in recent years. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman initially put forth a public image as a reformer, liberalizing the country's policies on women's rights and criminal justice. However, the 2018 assassination of dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi has been catastrophic for both the Crown Prince's public relations offensive and relations with Washington. The rift intensified after President Biden, who said the assassination should make the kingdom a pariah, took office. Obviously. During the same period, China's economic relationship to Saudi Arabia has grown closer, with the kingdom providing 1.76 million barrels of oil a day to the country in 2021, according to the Journal. Citing China's General Administration of Customs, while the country plans to maintain the dollar for the majority of its oil trading, a shift by the Saudis could create a domino effect for China's other major oil supplies, such as Russia, Angola, and Iraq. Saudi Arabia previously threatened to sell in other currencies. In 2019, Congress passed a bill that would allow antitrust liability for OPEC members. The bill, which has been introduced numerous times over the years, failed again last year. So, there is a lot of stuff going on with this. There is a lot of stuff moving with this. Now, a little bit of backup and education for those who don't know. And I do want to make sure that we're all up on the same page. Because, again, I didn't know this until this morning. I've got an article here up from Investopedia. This is by Thiha Toon, reviewed by Chris Stapleton, and fact-checked by Catherine Beer. After the collapse of Bretton Woods gold standard in the early 1970s, the U.S. struck a deal with Saudi Arabia to standardize oil prices in dollar terms. Through this deal, the petrodollar system was born, along with a shift away from pegged exchange rates and gold-backed currencies to non-backed floating rate regimes. The petrodollar system elevated the U.S. dollar to the world's reserve currency, and through this status, the U.S. enjoys persistent trade deficits and is the global economic hegemony. The petrodollar system also provides U.S. financial markets with sources of liquidity and foreign capital inflows through petrodollar recycling. However, a full explanation of the effects of petrodollars on the U.S. dollar requires a brief synopsis of the history of the petrodollar. Faced with mounting inflation, debt from the Vietnam War, extravagant domestic spending habits, and a persistent balance of payments deficit, the Nixon admin decided in August of 1971 to suddenly and shockingly end the convertibility of U.S. dollars into gold. In the wake of this Nixon shock, the world saw the end of the gold era and a free fall of the U.S. dollar amidst soaring inflation. Through bilateral agreements with Saudi Arabia, beginning in 1974, the U.S. managed to influence the members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to standardize the sale in oil in dollars in return for invoicing oil in dollar denominations. Saudi Arabia and other Arab states secured U.S. influence in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, along with U.S. military assistance during an increasingly worrisome political climate, which saw the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the fall of the Iranian Shah, and the Iran-Iraq War. Out of this mutually beneficial agreement, the petrodollar system was born. So, the way that I understand this, number one, it does appear, and this goes beyond just the prices and the pieces and the oil that's traded. The way that I understand this, both from reading this article and from some of the other things that I read, the US dollar is the trade standard for a vast majority of goods across the world. They may use their own currency to pay for it, but the values for exchange for one good to another good are measured in US dollars. Furthermore, and this is where I was very confused about this, because people kept saying that the US dollar could fall into free fall because of this, and that's because this is essentially what replaced the gold standard, according to this. The US dollar was pegged to another tangible asset that helped hold it somewhat into check. The asset itself was fluid enough that it could move, and the value could change a little bit and go a little bit off the inflationary measure, but for the most part, it was pegged to the oil supply. And without that peg, without that bookmark that holds it to the oil supply, yeah, we could start to see, especially the way this administration is trying to spend money, and a rate hike looming, runaway inflation back to the actual 20%, or what they're measuring now in 20%, but back to the way that we saw it in the 60s and 70s, or possibly worse. So that is something to watch for, especially as global economics begins to break down over the sanctioning of Russia. We'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from Reuters. Dollar firms as oil prices moderate, taking momentum from the euro. The US dollar index recovered after falling on Tuesday as volatile oil prices impacted the euro, and markets grappled with the significance of talks between Russia and Ukraine and indications that COVID lockdowns will crimp economic growth in China. The dollar index against major currencies was up less than 0.1% in the New York afternoon, as markets awaited the statements on Wednesday from the U.S. Federal Reserve after a meeting on monetary policy. The euro was last down less than 0.1% to 109.33 after having been up nearly a half percent. The pound sterling was up 0.2% to 130.27. The Japanese yen continues to trade at its weakest levels to the dollar in 5 years as the greenback gained 0.1% to 118.335 yen. The dollar index had lost nearly a half percent overnight after oil prices fell below $100 a barrel, bolstering the euro. The index recovered after the oil turned up from a low for the day and was last at 99.14, up 3% since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th. You know what would be really nice? $34 a barrel again. That would be nice. And we get the lifeblood of this economy pumping again. Brent crude futures dropped as much as 8% after concerns over supply were easing by ongoing Ukraine ceasefire talks, and its rising pinko-pox cases in China suggested slower economic growth and less demand for oil. So the dollar, well, we'll see what happens with that. That's it's print, but it's print around the world too. So it's not just here. We'll continue to follow this and see where this goes. Let's go talk about Russia. No, let's not talk about Russia yet. So, interestingly enough, I got into a Twitter spat yesterday with a state rep from New Hampshire who told me that crypto was the preferred currency of cartels and illegal activity and organized crime, which is funny because I thought the U.S. government still used the U.S. dollar for organized crime. But just as soon as that was coming out, the AP put this piece out as well. Mexican cartels turn to Bitcoin, internet, and e-commerce. I've gotten no author given on this. Drug cartels in Mexico are increasingly turning to the internet, Bitcoin, and e-commerce to launder money and sell drugs, according to a report released Thursday by the Yuan Office on Drugs and Crime. The report of the International Narcotics Board said Thursday that the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel are increasingly using small online purchases of Bitcoin to avoid money laundering controls. The report said Mexican cartels are believed to launder about $25 billion a year in Mexico. After splitting drug proceeds into small payments to avoid controls, the cartels then use these accounts to buy a series of small amounts of Bitcoin online, obscuring the origin of the money and allowing them to pay associates elsewhere in the world. The report said that both Mexican and Colombian organized criminal groups are increasing their use of virtual currency because of the anonymity and the speed of transactions. There is a level of anonymity that goes with Bitcoin. But I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are using a currency, a virtual currency, that has an online ledger on at least 5 computers at a time to make transactions, you're a moron. Most of your organized crime cartels are still using a briefcase full of US dollars, which I'm sure is what that particular New Hampshire congressperson got from a big bank right before voting against cryptocurrency and voting to regulate it. So that's what we see off of that. All right, now let's go talk about Russia and Ukraine. So top news on Russia-Ukraine today from the New York Post. Russia sanctions 13 Americans, including Joe and Hunter Biden, Hillary Clinton. From Bruce Golding. Russia announced sanctions Tuesday against Americans, including President Biden, his scandal-scarred son, Hunter Biden, and former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said the restrictions, which came amid waves of sanctions by the U.S. and allies that have crippled Russia's economy over the invasion of Ukraine, were the consequence of what it called the White House's extremely Russophobic policy. Yeah, the 80s called, and they want their foreign policy back. The move prevents those named from entering Russia and freezes any assets that they have there. According to the BBC, Moscow called the restrictions personal sanctions and a stop list based on the principle of reciprocity. The foreign ministry also warned that additional sanctions would follow against each other unspecified Russophobic U.S. officials, military officers, lawmakers, business owners, and media figures. The measures, which target 13 Americans, including Anthony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, Mark Milley, won't prevent them from engaging in high-level communications with Russia, the news agency said. Others on the list include National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead, and the U.S. Agency for International Development Administrator Samantha Power, a former U.S. ambassador to the UN. In addition to sanctioning the Americans, Russia also announced similar measures against 313 Canadians, including Trudeau and several of his ministers. Yeah, that's because Zelensky was just in Canada. I got an article on that, but what does this do? I don't know. I think a little bit of this might be a little bit too late, and really honestly, other than diplomatic talks, Russia doesn't have any leverage to do this. Like, oh darn, I can't go to Moscow. What do I do? I just go to Ukraine, who launders our money. I don't understand the idea of this or what Putin thought this was going to do. Apparently they thought it was going to do something, but it gave us a chance to have the red-haired bobblehead snidely laugh in our sense of self-worth. From the Daily Wire, red-haired bobblehead floats bizarre joke theory that Russia meant to sanction President Biden's deceased father. From Virginia Kruta, White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead bizarrely suggested on Tuesday that Russia might have intended to sanction Joe Biden's deceased father rather than the president himself. Bobblehead fielded a question on the issue following a new round of sanctions from Russia against a number of American political officials during the press briefing from CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Zhang. Let's listen.
And one more on the sanctions that were imposed today by Russia against yourself, President Biden, other top U.S. officials. Do you have a response to that? And how will it impact any of you, if at all?
Sure. I would first note that President Biden is a junior, so they may have sanctioned his dad. May he rest in peace. The second piece I would say...
Oh, that's so funny.
Is that won't surprise any of you that none of us are planning tourist trips to Russia. None of us have bank accounts that we won't be able to access, so we will forge ahead.
Yeah, that's something I could see. Now, if there was a sanction against Trump, I could see where that might actually cause a problem because he does do business in Russia, or his organization does, and I'm sure that his organization, possibly not him anymore, but his organization has a bank account over there. He was the president at one point. He was supposed to divest from all that stuff. Did he? Only time will ever tell us. But yeah, as I said, oh no, we can't go to Moscow for a tourist trip. Whatever will we do? And we don't own any businesses or do any businesses that aren't the U.S. government and taking advantage of the American people. Whatever shall we do? So, that's what we have here. Max Seddon says Russia has sanctioned Joe Biden and a range of other top U.S. officials. And you know it's official, too, because the names are written in Cyrillic. Biden, Blinken, Lloyd Austin, Milley, Sullivan, Bill Burns, I'm not sure who that is, Bobblehead, Dateep Singh, I don't know who that is either, Samantha Power, Hunter Biden, Robert Hunter Biden, I didn't know that was his real name, Hillary Clinton, Adewale Adeyemo, and Rita Joe Lewis. And of course, I can't read Cyrillic, so I don't know what the titles are for some of these people. But it looks like they put the titles in behind them. From the USA Today. Congress prepares for a historic address from Zelensky. Russian fighting intensifies outside of Kiev And this is a live updater, but we'll grab what's on here. President Vladimir Zelensky will deliver a virtual address to Congress on Wednesday, where he's expected to press for greater assistance to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as it enters its third week. He's been doing this for 3 weeks, and for the 3 months immediately preceding this. This is not new. World leaders have addressed Congress many times, but Zelensky's virtual speech will be a moment unlike any other. He'll be a foreign head of state under siege from a global military power, dialing in from an undisclosed location to address lawmakers still working under the restrictions of a lingering pandemic. Geez, how many buzzwords can you put into one single paragraph? Zelensky's virtual address starts at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. It won't be held in the brightly lit, ornate House chamber that has served as the backdrop to important speeches from global leaders and larger-than-life historical figures. Instead, it will be in the Capitol Visitor Center Congressional Auditorium, a relatively unremarkable venue, bathed in dark wood paneling. Members of Congress who are not fully vaccinated must don a mask. Why? No, I'm dead serious. Why? They all went and sat together in the State of the Union address, unmasked, because DC took out their indoor mask mandate, and so did the congressional mask mandate. That mandate is gone. They're mostly going to be just among themselves, and this is the most important part. Zelensky's dialing in. He's phoning in. He's not actually going to be there. He is not actually physically going to be in the room with anybody. Zelensky, who suggested there will still be some reason to be optimistic that negotiations might yet yield an agreement, said in a video address to his nation that Russia's demands were becoming more realistic. The sides were expected to speak again later on Wednesday. Efforts are still needed. Patience is needed, he said in a video address to the nation. Any war ends with an agreement. Meanwhile, Kiev suffers. Shrapnel from artillery shells slammed into a 12-story apartment building from central Kiev on Wednesday, obliterating the top floor and igniting a fire, according to a statement and images released by the Kiev Emergency Agency. The neighboring building was also damaged. The agency reported 2 victims without elaborating. Russian forces have intensified fighting in Kiev suburbs, notably around the town of Bucha in the northwest and the highway leading west towards Zhytomyr, said Alexei Kuleba, head of the Kiev region, on Wednesday. So that's what we see off of this. And again, I mean, he's going to come in here, he's going to beg for U.S. involvement off of this. And a lot of the Democrats might virtue signal and say, well, we can definitely go and do that. And the president will say, oh, we need to go back and support the Ukraine, man. Come on. Do I think we go in there? I think it's 50-50 at this point. I really do. The left-wing base in this country has been riled up into such a fervor that they believe that there's no other option. But there still is the fact that there's a nuclear warhead that's being waved over the top of us. So I don't know if we go or not. I would give that about 50-50 odds at this point. From the Daily Wire. Please close the sky. Zelensky asked Justin Trudeau to imagine someone taking down your Canadian flags in Montreal. From Ian Haworth. One day before he's due to address the U.S. Congress, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to the Canadian Parliament on Tuesday. Zelensky called for Canada to impose harsher economic sanctions against Russia, as well as implementing military pressure. Justin, can you imagine you or your children hearing all these severe explosions? Bombing of airport, bombing of Ottawa airport, Zelensky said. Speaking directly to Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, cruise missiles falling down and children asking you, what happened? Dear Justin, can you imagine every day you receive memorandums about number of casualties, including women and children? You heard about bombings. Currently, we have 97 children that died during the war, Zelensky said. Imagine someone taking down Canadian flags in Montreal and other Canadian cities. I know that you all support Ukraine. We have been friends with you, Justin. But I would like you to understand, and I would like you to feel this, what we feel every day. We want to live, and we want to be victorious. And we want to keep moose and squirrel. Zelensky then called for a no-fly zone to be imposed. I want to talk about this for just a sec, because I know that they're going to come back and try to do this. And, Zelensky comes back out, please close skies, close airspace, please stop bombings. Now, when you have a no-fly zone over a country, that has to be enforced. And that, I think, is the side of things that the leftoids, the people who were anti-war up until 3 weeks ago, don't understand about this situation. Well, a no-fly zone it's not a military action, it just means that they can't fly over there. Yeah, how do you enforce that from the ground? You know what you do to enforce that? You grab surface-to-air missiles and kill people for it, or use fighter jets of your own and kill people for it. That is an act of war. Declaring and defending a no-fly zone to a country that's not in your alliance, number one, and number two, is not your country. It's not just the fact that they can't fly over there. It's not. You got to enforce that somehow. But yes, he did call for Canada to do this and impose the no-fly zone. From the New York Post. Speaking of flight, Russia passes law to take control of foreign airplanes left in the country. From Ken Gardner. Russia on Monday passed a law allowing the country's airlines to re-register planes that have been leased from abroad in an attempt to bypass Western sanctions. The bill, signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin, is intended to support domestic flights in Russia to ensure the uninterrupted functioning of its activities in the field of civil aviation. Western sanctions imposed after Russia's invasion of Ukraine gave the plane leasing firms until March of 28 to repossess aircraft from the country. Russian airlines have about 780 leased jets, with 515 of them leased from abroad. Most foreign leased jets operating in Russia are registered in Bermuda and Ireland. Aviation authorities in those countries have said they were suspending certificates of airworthiness from those planes. Planes cannot fly without certificate of airworthiness issued by Civil Aviation Authority in the country where they're registered. Re-registering foreign-owned planes in Russia would aim to circumvent that requirement, a source told Reuters. So, essentially, what this means is Russia is going to take away stuff that was left in their country. And, essentially, oh, mine now. I re-register. Hey, look, now I can certify. It is airworthy. I fly a plane now. We have civil airline again. Which that sounds an awful lot to me like theft, but the other side of that is, given everything that was going on and the fact that places were going into no-fly zones, I guess if it was me, I would have been in a little bit more of a hurry to get those things out of there. Like, again, probably 3 weeks ago, I would have done that. From CNN. White House under pressure from Congress and Zelensky to find ways to deliver Soviet-made weapons to Ukraine. From Zachary Cohen, Natasha Bertrand, Jeremy Herb, and Katie Bo Williams. Nearly 3 weeks into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Biden admin is still assessing the most effective way to get military aid to the country without triggering a wider war. While admin officials say the effort to provide Ukrainian forces with the American-made weapons such as Javelin, anti-tank, and Stinger anti-aircraft missiles has been largely successful, the White House is under pressure to do more. Specifically, both Congress and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky have pressured Biden officials to help broker the transfer of heavier Soviet-made weaponry to Ukraine, including MiG fighter jets and S-300 surface-to-air missile systems. It's a message that Zelensky could echo on Wednesday when he addresses Congress. But so far, the Biden admin has not helped provide those heavier Soviet-made weapon systems. U.S. officials continue to grapple with concerns about how Russia might respond if certain weapon transfers are approved. Officials have also raised questions about how useful MiG fighters would be and whether they are worth the risk. But what this boils down to, essentially, as they go, because they are desperate, they definitely want to see us getting weapons into there, which, honestly, I said you should have been doing to begin with. Before this started. Now this has started, this is an act of aggression and an act of war, but before this started, just start shipping guns over there. Now, ship some of them back to us too, because come on. But just start loading that up. Getting more guns into more hands. Firearm behind every blade of grass and such. But that essentially translates to this. You've got your Ukrainian flag out everywhere. I stand with Raytheon. Thank you, KTZed, for the meme that I stole from Shitpost Central and the Porch Boys Discord server. I got an op-ed here from the New York Post, not green check verified, of course. Aid Ukraine to halt Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping's diabolical plans. From Michael Goodwin. From the outset of the Russian invasion, the words used to describe Ukraine's chances covered a range of possibilities, with one glaring exception. Hardly anyone dared even talk about Ukrainian victory. Starting now, that much must change. China's apparent willingness to assist Vladimir's army, in addition to helping him avoid economic sanctions, dramatically raises the stakes. A Russian victory in Ukraine would now be a triumph for the New World Order, led by brutal autocrats, and defeat for the West and democracy itself. Holy shit, the propaganda in this. To prevent that disastrous outcome, the US and Europe must sharply increase their help for beleaguered Ukraine when they meet next week in Brussels. Short of sending NATO troops or starting any direct military conflict with Russia, they must do everything possible to help Ukraine defeat Putin, or at least deny him the total victory that he wants. President Biden can make a down payment on a new approach before leaving Washington by finally approving the transfer of 28 fighter jets from Poland. In doing so, the president would be reversing his reversal of a week ago after Tony Blinken said yes to the idea. Biden personally rejected it, saying it would be escalatory. His decision came after Poland suggested the unused MiG-29 fighters to an American airbase in Germany, then having Ukrainians fly them into Ukraine. In exchange, the U.S. was asked to send F-16s to replenish the Polish Air Force. Poland wanted to avoid becoming a Putin target as well as upgrade its own air capability, but the idea of first flying the MiGs to Germany was too cute by half for Washington, and the Pentagon shot down the idea as not tenable. It's not tenable. And again, you warmonger, you fucking war pig. Right now, you're looking at things. And as I said, even throwing small arms out to the Ukrainians is an act of aggression at this point. They're not an ally. They're not a NATO member. They're not an EU member. This is an act of aggression. This is not our war, and we're not going to be world police. As much as the people who have the Ukrainian flag in their bios stand with Raytheon right now, world police never turns out well for us. And yet, I still feel it in my bones, I feel it in my chest, I feel it in my heart that we're going to wind up there at some point. So we'll keep watching that and see what happens there. From Axios, Trump said he thought Putin was negotiating before invading Ukraine. He probably was. From Shauna Chen. Look at the height difference between the two of those. Former President Trump told the Washington Examiner in an interview that he's surprised Vladimir Putin followed through on his threat to invade Ukraine. Trump, who maintained a close working relationship with Putin, "He was in his pocket," probably says the author that was writing this at the time, during his presidency, has condemned an invasion as a crime against humanity, but called Putin very savvy for recognizing two breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine as independent 2 days before Russian forces launched an attack on the entire country. He's taken heat from both Democrats and war peg warmonger Republicans for declining to criticize Putin directly. "I'm surprised," he told the Examiner on Tuesday. "I thought he was negotiating. When he sent his troops to the border, I thought he was negotiating. I thought it was a tough way to negotiate, but a smart way. I figured he was going to make a good deal, like everyone else does with the U.S., and for other people that they tend to deal with. You know, like every trade deal. We've never made a good trade deal until I came along. And then I went in, and I think he changed. I think he's changed. Very sad. Sad. Very sad. It's a very sad thing for the world. He's very much changed." Trump said he gets a bad rap on his relationship with Putin. "I've been very, very tough on Putin," he said. "At the same time, I get along with him very well. He's a swell guy. Very smart. Very savvy. Great guy. Love Putin. Got along with him. But I got along with most world leaders as well." Worth noting, former National Security Advisor Walrus Mustache said in an interview earlier this month that it's inaccurate to say Trump's behavior deterred the Russians. That's because he is also itching to go to fucking war. Because he's John fucking Bolton. And I think Putin might have been actually negotiating at the beginning of this. I was myself surprised that he actually went in and did the invasion. I thought he just wanted to come out and shake his fist and say, "Look what we can do at moment's notice." That's what I thought that this was. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and now we're sitting here with piles and piles of propaganda. Nobody knows what's actually happening over there, just what the mainstream media tells them to think. And a foreign leader that's begging for the U.S. to go start sending people in there, our boys, our kids, to go get killed for his cause. Let's grab one from CNN. "We will all be judged." Russian prisoners of war voiced disquiet and shame over the war in Ukraine. Yeah, this is unpopular with the Russian people, too. "I want to tell our commander-in-chief, stop terror attacks in Ukraine, because when we come back, we'll rise against him." Yeah, you're probably not going back. You're probably just going to land in the salt mine, dude, after comments like that. Vladimir Putin has given orders to commit crimes. It's not just demilitarize Ukraine or defeat armed forces in Ukraine, but now cities of peaceful civilians are being destroyed. The crimes we committed, we will all be judged. These are the voices of Russian prisoners of war now held by Ukraine. Nearly a dozen have appeared in news conferences held by Ukrainian authorities, just a few of the 600 that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says have been captured. Their public appearances may be questionable under the Geneva Conventions, which forbid states from causing unnecessary humiliation to prisoners of war, and it's possible that they felt pressure to express views sympathetic to those of their captors. Absolutely. Absolutely. But also keep in mind, CNN has an agenda to tell you that everybody who's Russian is evil, because they installed the former president. CNN requested access to speak with the prisoners with the Ukraine Interior Ministry. That request was made prior to a press conference that took place in Kiev on Friday. CNN spoke with the three men immediately after that press conference. Once again, I do believe that the soldiers on the ground are probably looking at this and saying, what the fuck have we done? What have we done? I'm sure that the Nazis in Germany looked at this at the end and said, what have we done? But again, do keep in mind that CNN has pushed an agenda for years to tell you that Russia is the most evil place in the world. And of course, now we've got another journalist too. Actually, let's listen to Zelensky just quick first.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russian military will ultimately be held responsible for war crimes. He posted these comments online, and he directed them at Russian soldiers.
Но ради чего вам погибать? И зачем? Я знаю, что вы...
But why should you die? What for? I know that you want to survive. We hear your conversations in the intercepts. We hear what you really think about this senseless war, about this disgrace, and about your state. On behalf of the Ukrainian people, I give you a chance to survive. If you surrender to our forces, we will treat you the way people are supposed to be treated.
Well, I mean, that in and
Joining
of
us
itself
now
is
is
an
Stephen Weichert. He is a freelance journalist.
Oh, shut up. Yeah, and I mean, interestingly enough, to see what's going on with that, and the thought process behind that entire thing. It's an interesting way to look at the way of the world. Like, okay, yeah, if we capture you, just surrender to us, and you'll become Ukrainians. I don't know that goes over well, though, either with the Ukrainian people. Like, hey, these are the people that invaded and tried to kill us. Now you want us to assimilate them into our culture? That never goes over well in history. So we'll see what happens with that. I got a pair back to back from the New York Post, both going on the side of economics in Russia. From the New York Post, number 1, Russian influencers sob bitter tears as Putin's Instagram ban goes into effect. From Andrew Court. Some of Russia's most famous influencers have broken down in tears after learning Putin is instituting an Instagram ban amid his country's ongoing war with Ukraine. The ban went into effect Monday, just days after the Kremlin claimed that social media site was causing an incitement of violence against Russians. Before having their accounts restricted, popular public figures wept at the news in their final video posts, with one saying it felt like her life was being taken away from her. I'm not afraid of admitting that I do not want to lose you, Russian reality star Olga Buzova, 36, told her 23.3 million fans, according to Insider. I do not want to know what the future holds, she further sobbed in the 7-minute video. I don't know. I just shared my life, my work, and my soul. I do not do this all as a job for me. This is part of my soul. It feels like a big part of my heart, and my life is being taken away from me. If your life entirely is being defined by your social media presence, you're doing something wrong. And I'm saying this as somebody who uses Twitter way too much, by the way. I use it for advertisement for the show. I use it for advertisement for the website, for the people who are on the website. I use it for marketing and promotion all the time. I use it to come out and promote my life's work, but even I understand that if you're sitting here and you've lost a part of your soul because you've lost your Instagram account, you're doing something wrong. And as many, by the way, Twitter and Instagram accounts as Stephen Ignoramus has gone through, he still chuckles, he still laughs, and he just goes out and makes another one. He isn't losing his soul. He rolls with it and gets on with his way, but, we've got people like this who are out there legitimately crying over the fact that they've lost their ability to be simped over by a bunch of... And I mean, look at that picture. You don't think that there was an ulterior motive behind that picture? So that's what we see off of that. And furthermore, from the New York Post again, Russian porn stars moaning. Yeah, they are. Russian porn stars moaning after they're banned from OnlyFans during Ukrainian invasion. From Russia, without love. Adult entertainers in Russia have been blocked from OnlyFans amid financial sanctions imposed by the country following its invasion of Ukraine. Several kinky content creators spoke out on Sunday saying they were unable to share new videos and access money earned via their OnlyFans accounts. In short, I don't have any money to live. Many models are faced with this. Nobody thought it could happen, user Bunny Mommy told the Rolling Stone, alleging her account was frozen Saturday evening. The X-rated model claimed she lost over $8,000 amid the ban. In a statement Sunday, OnlyFans told the Daily Beast, while creators are not responsible for the recent attacks in Ukraine, due to worldwide financial restrictions, we have very limited methods to pay creator accounts linked to Russia and Belarus. As a result, payments have been limited. So, let's see. Russia invades Ukraine. And now the cancer of OnlyFans is restricted. It's not over, but it's restricted heavily. Small wins, boys. Small wins. So that's what we see off of that. Libs of TikTok. The White House told the TikTok influencers who were invited on the Zoom call to blame the high gas prices on Putin. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Why is gas so expensive, and why is the United States inflation rate at a 4-time decade high? I had the opportunity to ask the White House why gas down the street is $7, and here's what they said. The obvious reason: we are getting out of a 2-year pandemic. When use goes up, price goes up. But the call was predominantly about Ukraine and Russia, so how does that relate? Russia is one of the top 3 producers of oil, and it is actually their #1 revenue source. Now, with Putin starting this horrific fight between Ukraine and Russia, nobody wants to work with him and do an...
She does not believe a word that she's saying. Listen to what we just listened to again. Let's back that up probably about 25 seconds and listen to this. Listen to the tone and the tenor of her voice. She has no fucking clue what's going on. She does not believe a word that she's saying. It's basically just, here's the script. Read the script. Okay, Orange Man is bad. Putin is bad. Everything that we don't like has to do with Putin. It's all Putin. It's all Putin and the pandemic. It has nothing to do with policies here.
Opportunity to ask the White House why gas down the street is $7, and here's what they said. The obvious reason: we are getting out of a 2-year pandemic. When use goes up, price goes up. But the call was predominantly about Ukraine and Russia, so how does that relate? Russia is one of the top 3 producers of oil.
Say something bad about Russia. Say that Ukraine is good. Say that this is all about Russia.
And it is actually their #1 revenue source. Now, with Putin starting this horrific fight between Ukraine and Russia, nobody wants to work with him and do an international trade. So, with people being scared of war and limited resources, prices are bound to go up as well. For the people who can't pay $7 for a gallon of gas, there's an app called Gas Buddy that shows you the cheapest gas near you.
Use Gas Buddy, which is linked to the AAA and Department of Transportation. There's an app that you can use if you can't afford $7 gas. This is all Putin's fault.
As well as a link in my bio to donate to the misplaced refugees of Ukraine. Why is gas so expensive?
Dude, she does not believe a word that she's saying. That is the first thing that I could take out of listening to this. From the Daily Mail. I gotta start archiving them again. They don't block me for ad blocker anymore. But still, I mean, look at all these advertisements. Look at the eye aids about this. Biden deploys teenage TikTok stars to blame soaring gas prices and inflation of Russia as the U.S.'s worst cost of living crisis in 40 years tanks president's ratings ahead of midterms. Joe Biden has cynically deployed TikTokers to blame soaring inflation on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, even though it was a serious issue for months before the war began. The White House held a Zoom briefing for about 30 popular internet figures who had promptly took to their social media accounts to talk about what the White House had briefed them on. They include Ellie Zeiler, an 18-year-old who has more than 10 million followers and who later did as she was asked with a pro-Biden clip. 18 years old. Again, this girl has no idea what's going on. This is probably her mom's house. Never been out into the real world. She probably does have a car of her own. She probably does drive. She posted the video on her profile entitled, "Why is gas so expensive?" It is unclear if any of the influencers were paid for their services, though they were approached because of their work with a nonprofit called Gen Z for Change. Yeah, we watched that already. Zyler did not shy away from the fact that she had been in contact with the Biden admin over the course of making the video. Dude, that video, let's go look at that again. This sounds like a hostage negotiation.
Expensive, and why is the United States inflation rate at a 4-time decade high? I had the opportunity to ask the White House why gas down the street is $7, and here's what they said. The obvious reason: we're getting out of a 2-year pandemic. When use goes up, price goes up. But the call was predominantly about Ukraine and Russia, so how does that relate? Russia is one of the top 3 producers of oil, and it is actually their #1 revenue source. Now, with Putin starting this horrific fight between Ukraine and Russia, nobody wants to work with him and do an international trade. So with people being scared of war and limited resources, prices are bound to go up as well. For the people who can't pay $7 for a gallon of gas, there's an app called Gas Buddy that shows you the cheapest gas near you, as well as a link in my bio.
Yeah, dude, that sounds like a hostage negotiation. I almost have to close my eyes and listen to this because, as most of you know, she's got the mane of dark hair and those light hazel eyes, and those usually do kind of sway me. But I mean, I listen to this and I hear, the president told me to do this. I have to do this. This is like giving a speech in front of my class. Here's some major cringe for you. This is from NASA Watch. May the force be with Ukraine. I had to see it. You had to see it. Resist. Stand with Ukraine. Not only is the X-Wing colored with its wings in blue and yellow, like the Ukrainian flag. Not only that, but you see on the Imperial Star Destroyers as well, the blues and the reds of the Russian Federation. Pure propaganda. I can't tell if there's something written on the nose of the destroyer either. It looks kind of like it, but I can't tell if those are windows or if that's something actually written there. But it's like, seriously, come on. Come on. From the Blaze. House Democrat declares it's un-American to blame Biden for gas crisis. This is Putin's fault. From Chris Enlow. Democrat Rep. Kim Schreier claimed Monday that bucking the Biden admin's narrative on intensifying gas prices is un-American. The Biden admin launched a full court press last week blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin for soaring gas prices and out-of-control inflation. The problem, of course, is that inflation rates were already at historic highs and gas prices were already sky-high before Russia launched its full-scale invasion in late February. Those are hate facts, Chris Enlow. Those are hate facts. The Biden admin launched a full court press last week blaming President Putin for his soaring gas prices and out-of-control inflation. The problem, of course, is that inflation rates were already at historic highs. During an interview with journalist Brandy Cruz, the Washington Democrat regurgitated the Biden admin's talking points and charged that dissenters are un-American. I believe a couple things. Right now, in the last 2 weeks, this is Putin. You should be blaming Putin, if anybody, for this, Schreier said. To not blame Putin, first of all, is denying reality. And second, frankly, I think is un-American. So this is Putin's fault, she declared. Strangely, Schreier immediately blamed the pinkpox pandemic and supply problems just as the Biden admin did before the Putin invaded the Ukraine. Before this, because people were already suffering at the gas pump, before this, right, we saw an increase of over $1 a gallon for the past year and a half. So that can be blamed realistically on during the pandemic when people were not going to work and driving was down. Gas prices were down, she said. As demand increased and rigs had not yet been turned on, there was a supply-demand issue, like with everything else in this country, and that was to blame. I don't know, man. I think if we opened up the pumps and got some stuff coming from here, I think that would do nicely too. But that's what we see off of that. All right, let's move on and talk about some of the rest of the news that we have here. Starting with the post-millennial. Breaking: bomb squad on the scene at Tim Pool's studio. So not only is he doxxed at this point, not only is he getting swatted left and right, but Tim Pool apparently got a bomb threat too. I think there is at least a 50-50 shot he's doing this himself. I believed the first one, but once he saw how much support and fame that he got out of the first one, I do think that there's a universe where he's doing some of this himself. I'm sorry to say it. I know a lot of you guys like Tim Pool, but the fact that they've done this now 6 times and nobody's been caught off of it yet, tells me something else is amiss here. But if it's not, I do hope that Tim Pool has a long and healthy life. I do. I hope that he is saved and protected. Tim Pool reported that the bomb squad was at his studio, where he records Timcast IRL along with other properties that are part of the Tim Pool content universe. Pool said that events will not be filmed due to security reasons as recommended by police. He said on air, as they discussed the incident, that there was an actual reason that the bomb squad was deployed, and that he was concerned that he might hear the house shake. Let's listen.
We were swatted 6 times. Now we've had an incident where the bomb squad's been deployed, and, you know, I can't go into details, but there is a reason for why they're deployed. It wasn't the same as a swatting. Like, something actually happened. We have to be careful about discussing the full details. But it called whatever happened was serious enough where they actually called reinforcements. So, like, I'm actually worried we're going to hear, you know, the house shake or something like that.
Yeah,
like, there may actually be something about to happen.
That's why I'm asking people pray. I mean, if you pray the rosary, but
Pool goes on and tweets out, police have requested for security reasons that we not film what's happening. It's a difficult position to let people know what's happening. What is this?
And they actually announced a number.
Okay, that's a 10-minute. We're not going to do that. It's a difficult position to let people know what's happening, Pool continued, because you don't want to generate attention around these kinds of incidents, but if you don't, it's harder to be taken seriously when more serious things are happening. Pool's studio has recently been swatted 6 times when an anonymous person or persons called local police and fire departments to report shootings and once a fire at the studio. Someone called the police and said they shot and killed 2 people and were going to kill more, Pool reported after one incident. The first incident. The second incident in January was reported worse than the first one. Pool has kept details of the incidents close as they represent an ongoing security risk, are under investigation. After he planned to update the studio security to an extreme degree. And I'm sure that he can just come on and say, okay, well, we're under attack for everything here, so go on there and like what you do, spread this around, and make sure you hit that Patreon, because we need to do something about what's happening with security here. And then turns around, gets off the camera and says, okay, Vice, your studio's under attack, so let's go some more security up there. Some more Senate news. Senate votes to overturn mask mandate on airplanes in transit. From Jessica Wehrman. The Senate on Tuesday voted 57-40 to overturn a federal requirement that passengers on U.S. airplanes and other modes of public transport wear masks. Yeah, because it's getting politically inconvenient. The Congressional Review Act measure, introduced by Rand Paul, is the latest salvo in a fight between congressional Republicans and the Biden admin over public health requirements related to the pandemic, which has killed more than 963,000 Americans to date, according to the CDC. Now, you'll notice, too, they only drag the death, like, they don't have the live death counter like they did before under the Trump admin, but they will drag it out when a Republican tries to come back and force a law to overturn some of this shit. According to the CDC, despite the defection of 8 Democrats, John Tester, Jackie Rosen, and Carolyn Cortez Masto of Nevada, Michael Bennett of Colorado, Sinema and Mark Kelly of Arizona, Manchin of Virginia, or West Virginia rather, and Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, all voted to oppose the mandate. The resolution's future is uncertain in the House. President Biden has vowed to veto it if it passes there, with the White House saying the determination of the timeline and circumstances under which masks should be required in these settings should be guided by science, not politics. Even though it's being guided by politics and not science. And in fact, when we look at this now, this is all about politics because, again, this is politically inconvenient to go into the midterms with people having to mask up, going onto the airplane. From the Blaze, Fauci says the GOP will target him if they get control of Congress. It's Benghazi hearings all over again. From Alex Nitzberg, St. Anthony of Fauci, the patron saint of medicine, has suggested that if Republicans take control of Congress, they will target him, but uncover nothing. It's Benghazi hearings all over again, Fauci said, according to the Washington Post. They'll try to beat me up in public, and there'll be nothing there, he said. It will distract me from doing my job, and the way it's doing right now. Fauci, who served as the NIAID director for more than 3 decades, has been a prominent public health figure throughout the pinko-pox pandemic. He's also currently serving as the chief medical advisor to President Brandon. Rand Paul, who's been a vociferous critic of Fauci, proposed an amendment to nix the NIAID director position, but that proposal did not clear the Senate Health Panel on Tuesday, according to the Post. Paul had proposed eliminating Fauci's role and replacing it with 3 directors who would helm 3 new institutes, because that's what we need right now is more government institutes. And I hate to say it, but Fauci's right. If Republicans take control of Congress, the first thing they're going to be doing is trying to get him out of that position, because he got really powerful and really popular, and it went straight to his head. And they should. They absolutely should. If the people are going to give them their votes, then they should reward the people who gave them their votes and get rid of Fauci. So yes, absolutely. There'll be laws, his department will be split up. He'll probably still be chief medical advisor, but as far as the investigations go, no, they probably won't do anything like that. From the Daily Wire, Biden announces the First Lady's husband contracted COVID, has to be reminded that's him. President Biden announced Tuesday that the First Lady's husband contracted COVID, only to be reminded a few seconds later by someone at the sidelines that he is in fact the First Lady's husband. Look at the stage! Alright, let's watch.
Stage, but that's enough too. Look at the stage. But there's been a little change in the arrangement of who's on the stage because of the First Lady's husband contracting COVID. But look at this room and what you see. Pardon? That's right. She's fine. It's me. That's not together. The second lady.
Hold on a sec. He had to be reminded that the First Lady's husband is him. And most popular president in history, 80 million votes, 81 million votes, 10 scoops ice cream.
The first gentleman. How about that? Anyway. Stage, but that's enough too. Look at the stage. But there's been a little change in the arrangement of who's on the stage because of the First Lady's husband contracting COVID. But look at this room and what you see. Pardon? That's right. She's fine. It's me. That's not together.
All right, so there you go. 80 million votes. Biden had apparently been trying to announce that Doug Emhoff, consort to Vice President Kamala Harris, has tested positive for the pinko pox. 80 million votes, folks. Are you ready for your next shot? Those of you who are fully vaccinated all the way through, are you ready for your next one? Pfizer to seek authorization for second booster shot for people 65 and older. From Berkeley Loveless Jr. Pfizer and BioNTech are expected to seek U.S. authorization this week for a second vaccine booster for people 65 and older, according to a person familiar with the plan. If the FDA grants authorization, the additional shot would go to a group of people who are among those with the highest risk of the severe illness and death from the pinko pox. The FDA has authorized boosters for everyone 12 and older on an emergency use basis. Multiple studies have shown that the protection from the initial booster dose begins to wane after several months, particularly against the Ermagerd and other variants of the coronavirus. Albert Bourla said Friday the company was close to submitting data to the FDA for a fourth dose of its vaccine after its scientists found that protection from the first booster began to wane after 3 or 4 months. So you've given out 3 shots of this poison that don't work, and now you want me to go get a 4th? Which will line your pockets from my taxpayer dollars because it's free, just go get it! Borla, fuck you. From MarketWatch. Disney workers call for walkouts over response to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. From Mike Murphy. Decrying a lack of action, a group of Walt Disney Company employees is calling for a series of walkouts over the next week to protest the company's response to a Florida bill that would restrict discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity in classrooms. Organizers are urging Disney workers to stage brief walkouts starting today and over the next 4 weeks during the scheduled break periods, culminating in a full-stage walkout March 22nd, where employees will not work or attend meetings. On its website, organizers said that Disney's LGBTQIA+ community and their allies are determined to take a stand against the bill, which they claim corporate leadership has utterly failed to do. As a community, we have been forced into an impossible and unsustainable position, the statement reads. We must now take action against Disney to protect employees and their families in the face of such open and unapologetic bigotry. Look, KTZed put this perfectly. What is Disney going to do? Exactly. Well, we just won't pay our taxes. Well, you'll be foreclosed on. The government will seize your property. We'll move out of state. Are you going to move the Epcot Center out of state? I understand that Disney has more money than fucking God, but there is a point where there is a cost feasibility to go back and do this. And where else are you going to go that you can run almost year-round? There are very few places in the country where you can do that. And Disneyland is not going to hold you up. I'm sorry to tell you this, but Disneyland is not going to hold you back up. And you've already got a park in California, so that's out. What are you going to do? Move to Arizona? The bill was approved by state lawmakers last week, and DeSantis is expected to sign it into law. I thought he did that already. The group behind the walkout say they're demanding Disney end all campaign donations to the Florida lawmakers who voted for the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, stop efforts to relocate Disney employees to Florida, and reaffirm a commitment protecting and advocating for its LGBTQIA+ workers. which they can. It's not an education facility. I can't imagine Disney is donating to a lot of Republicans anyway. I'm sure there are a few. But I can't imagine they're donating to a lot of them unless they want a major tax break. But seriously, what are you going to do? Alright, but that's what we see off of that. Let's grab one from NBC Los Angeles. Southern California City may declare Chick-fil-A restaurant a public nuisance over drive-thru line. From Kayla Galloway. A Southern California city is considering declaring Chick-fil-A restaurant a public nuisance due to traffic safety issues caused by the location's drive-thru line. The Santa Barbara City Council discussed the matter at a meeting on March 1st and will continue a public hearing in early June. According to a city report, restaurant's drive-thru line has caused chronic adverse traffic impact, blocking nearby State Street, sidewalks, disabled parking spots, and bike lanes. The restaurant opened in 2013, although the building was first approved as a Burger King drive-thru in 1978. According to the city, the following year, the city passed an ordinance prohibiting new or expanded drive-thru locations in Santa Barbara. According to the city, customers at the fast food restaurant routinely ignore traffic control signs posted in the area. Yeah, don't do that. And usually Chick-fil-A is really good about doing traffic direction to make sure that the streets aren't blocked. But seriously, don't do that. Don't ignore the traffic signs. The city says attempts to informally solve the traffic problem have been unsuccessful. Over the last several years, the city has received numerous public comments regarding the vehicle queue at 3707 State Street, the city reported. The public comments discussed traffic safety issues, auto collisions, cyclist safety issues, and several requests to remedy the issues caused by the drive-thru facility at 3707 State Street. The City Council scheduled a public hearing for June 7th, where officials will decide whether the restaurant will be declared a public nuisance. And I understand entirely, by the way, what happens when you have a Chick-fil-A in town, especially when it's fairly new. We just put one in Janesville. The one in Janesville is right next to a farm and fleet. Let me pull up the map here, actually. Because I can actually show you what's happening here. So this is on 14, the interstate. Yep, right there. So this is where the Chick-fil-A is. Let's actually get the regular map here. The Chick-fil-A is right here. That's fairly new. There's the Ford dealer. There's the farm and fleet. Now, when they go through the drive-thru, they've actually, and this is before the construction was finished, it's actually opened up here now. The barriers are down because they're done doing the construction. And they actually have traffic cones at the Chick-fil-A to guide you into lines that swirl around and spiral around here, going all the way up. I've seen it as far out as this far into the farm and fleet parking lot. Now again, luckily for this Chick-fil-A, they've got it, frontage area where they're not directly on Highway 14 or the I-90 alternate rather. They don't have to go up Pontiac Drive or anything else like that. They can overflow into the farm and fleet parking lot, but still, that is, and that's the way Madison is the same way too, by the way. Except they don't have the situation where they can go out, and they do back out into the road. They definitely do. Again, there's a frontage, so they're not going onto the main road, but still. But that's what we see off of that. Ginny Thomas acknowledges that she attended the January 6th Selfie Fest rally, but played no role in planning it. From Ariane DeVogue. Conservative activist Ginny Thomas said in an interview published Monday that although she attended the rally on January 6th, she played no role in planning the events. That day, she does not involve her husband, Clarence Thomas, in the political work she does pushing conservative causes. The rare interview with conservative publication The Washington Free Beacon comes as progressives and some legal ethics experts see a potential conflict with Thomas's activism and her husband's work with the Supreme Court. They point specifically to a recent January order when the court, over the dissent of Clarence Thomas, cleared the way for the release of the presidential records from the Trump White House to a congressional committee investigating the Selfie Fest. In recent weeks, media outlets, including CNN, have run stories exploring Ginny Thomas's long-term activism and calls for Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse. Federal recusal law says that any justice shall disqualify if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned, said Gabe Roth of Fix the Court, a group seeking more transparency from Supreme Court justices. Well, if there was an actual problem there, this would go through a DC municipal court, possibly a circuit court because it happened on the Capitol grounds, but a municipal court for sure, and wouldn't involve the Supreme Court unless there was a major appeal, and at which point, yes, Clarence Thomas would be forced to recuse himself. That would be the proper thing to do, and I think that he would do it. But really honestly, again, this is a nothing burger. This is a massive nothing that they're trying to make into something. They're trying to make fetch happen. From the Daily Wire. Leaked GOP messaging guide urges senators to avoid Democrat-style attacks on Ketanji Brown Jackson. No shit, that's what I told you. Let the black ethno-nats take her down instead. From Mary Margaret Olahan. Senators should avoid the vicious personal attacks Democrats leverage at conservative Supreme Court nominees when conducting Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearings, a leaked GOP messaging guide obtained by the Daily Wire shows. During Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation, Democrats lost the battle of public opinion when they launched a vicious personal attack against him and paid for it electorally, said a messaging guide issued by Republican Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, the only female Republican senator on the Judiciary Committee. That guide, distributed to attendees at the Conservative Women's Strategy session with the Independent Women's Law Center, which took place Tuesday afternoon on Capitol Hill, references the onslaught of personal and professional attacks leveraged against Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, and to a lesser extent, but still happened, Gorsuch as well. During their confirmation hearings, Democrats and activists accused both justices of being radically pro-life and seeking to overturn Roe v. Wade. Kavanaugh was accused of a slew of sexual assaults with little to no supporting evidence. Critics suggested that Barrett adopted black children for nefarious reasons. Judge Jackson deserves a thorough, fair, transparent confirmation process. The guide says it must be conducted in a manner devoid of needless attacks against her and focused on her past performance, writings, and rulings. It's almost certain that Democrats and their allies in the media will lob false accusations of racism and sexism when uncomfortable questions are asked, the guy continued. The Senate must not be threatened into silence. Look, seriously, like I said before, 99-0 tomorrow is the best strategic move. And again, Democrats are going to try to drag this out. And I'm sure they have their black nationalist buddies and Fox News on top of this out here. Well, they hosted an anti-Semitic speaker at a speaking event at one point in the 90s. She wasn't on the planning committee, but the group hosted an anti-Semitic speaker. Don't you think that's evil? Don't you want to jump on that? Oh no! Don't you want to... Come on, guys. Just come on. Take the bait. Hey, we found this in here. Do you want to take the bait? No. Confirm her. Get it over with. Get it done with. Call for a vote right now. That's what I would do if I was Marsha Blackburn. Call for the floor vote right now. And then go start telling your colleagues, hey, the best thing we can do right now is just let this one go through. So don't fight it. Don't finish it out. Confirm her, and we'll work with this later. But yes, they're absolutely right, and there's a reason that they picked a black woman to do this. Biden's saying because affirmative action, because it's historic, it's this, it's that. No, this is so they can have sound bites coming into midterm time. And realistically, she's not even that terrible of a justice. She's not that terrible of a nominee. Prosecutors detail Miami Proud Boys leader alleged plan to storm the Capitol. Yep, he is a Fed. From NBC6. The leader of the far-right Proud Boys had planned with other members to storm the Capitol in the days leading up to the violent January 6th attack, according to new paperwork filed by prosecutors. Monday's court filing comes as prosecutors were in Miami's federal court Tuesday to argue that Enrique Tarrio should remain behind bars while he awaits trial on conspiracy charges for his suspected role in the coordinated attack on the U.S. Capitol to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's electoral victory. Based on the compelling evidence of Tarrio's leadership of this conspiracy, there are no conditions of release that can reasonably assure the safety of the community or the defendant's appearance in court, prosecutors say in the 23-page filing, and based on Tarrio's public comments aimed at chilling witnesses against his co-conspirators, as well as his own purported efforts to evade the law enforcement, he poses a risk of obstructing justice, and should he be released, pretrial detention is warranted and necessary. No, he votes the wrong way, so we need to hold him in prison forever. And there again, I don't even know if that's true, because you're in the booth. You're in the booth. Nobody can see how you vote. You can come out of that booth and tell anybody that you voted for whoever the fuck you wanted. Let's see. During Tuesday's hearing, Magistrate Judge Lauren F. Lewis agreed with prosecutors and denied bond for Tarrio. The judge said her decision would be explained in detail later in a written order. Tarrio's attorney, Naeem Hassan, said his client was not at risk of fleeing from authorities and doesn't have a violent background. He argued the evidence against Tarrio was weak and relies mostly on text messages and social media. At no point in time did Mr. Tarrio instruct anybody to go in the building, Hassan told the judge. Hassan and other defendants charged with the same alleged conspiracy, who were present at the Capitol during the riot, have been allowed pretrial release. So, on top of all this, and it doesn't appear that the article goes into this here, but he was also found with plans to storm the Capitol, but they weren't necessarily the plans that went through on that day. Possibly not even the plans of what happened on that day. Possibly plans for a different day, but honestly, given the fact that he mysteriously had plans on him when he got arrested, tells me that he's probably glowing, and they were probably meant to find that. So now they can tell the world how evil the Proud Boys are and how evil Enrique Tarrio is. From CNN on International Women's Day, apparently. Or no, what was it? What did they call it? The Paycheck Equality Day? The day when women finally earn the same as men. I don't even know how the fuck that goes. Senate fails to advance Paycheck Fairness Act amid GOP opposition. From Claire Ferrand and Ted Barrett. Well, equal opportunity is already the law of the land, folks. It's the same thing with the lynching bill, even though that passed unanimously. It's already a crime to murder somebody. It's already a crime. It's already illegal to pay somebody differently based on gender. From Claire Ferrand and Ted Barrett. The Senate on Tuesday failed to advance the Paycheck Fairness Act, legislation aimed to address the gender wage gap that's a top agenda item for Democrats but that faces Republican opposition. A procedural vote to move forward with consideration of legislation failed by a vote of 49 to 50, falling short of the 60 vote threshold needed to succeed, and now they can put the names of every Republican on a campaign ad and say, "This senator hates women, and he wants women to make less, so they have to be chained to the kitchen." I don't have a lot to say about this. The gender wage gap is a myth. There is a wage gap, but it has more to do with different jobs sought, different hours, different amounts of vacation time, different times off for maternity leave. And of course, it is the culmination of taking the salaries of all men in the country versus all women in the country and dividing them against each other. And I don't think it takes into account OnlyFans either. From CBS. And I think after this, we might have to get out of here for the day. New Secret Service report details growing incel terrorism threat. From Nicole Skanga. The federal government on Tuesday released a study on the growing terrorism threat from men who call themselves anti-feminists or involuntary celibates, and draw motivation for violence from their inability to develop relationships with women. Since 2014, attacks inspired by the incel movement and spanning the US and Canada have left dozens dead. Early intervention and behavioral threat assessments could be the difference between life and death for women targeted by the growing ideology, according to the 26-page report. The report concluded that while there's no one profile of an individual who plans or executes an act of targeted violence, investigators must consider the potential targets when seeking to thwart attacks, as suspects routinely explore multiple targets during the planning process, before making their final selection. The Secret Service's National Threat Assessment Center took a deep dive into a series of red flags predating a shooting at a yoga studio in Tallahassee to determine how early intervention could save lives in the future. The NTAC routinely publishes research based on assessment of the current threat environment. In the case of 40-year-old gunman Scott Paul Bierley, there were countless warning signs. The man who opened fire inside of Hot Yoga Tallahassee, killing 2 women and injuring 4 more before committing suicide, had previously been fired for multiple teaching jobs, barred from bars and apartment buildings, and authored a 70,000-word revenge fantasy about a boy-turned-serial killer, according to a report. Barred from bars and apartment buildings, you say? Kind of sounds to me like some of the locals should have been watching this guy already. During his teen years, the attacker was accused of stalking his classmates. He wrote stories that centered around violent themes, said Steve Driscoll, lead research specialist at NTAC, in a briefing with reporters on Thursday. One of those stories was 81 pages long and involved the protagonist murdering several girls before committing suicide. The female characters in the story were killed, representing the attacker's actual classmates from his high school, but he slightly changed the names in his writings. Well, this guy sounds like a charming fellow. Definitely does. He was arrested 3 times for incidents of groping women in public. His roommates called him Ted Bundy, though social media users often refer to him as Nazi, because of course they do, because he's somebody that they don't like. His parents reported sleeping with their doors locked and removing him from the niece's birthday party after he touched young girls. So, a lot of this, to me, sounds like he should have already been in custody for something. And there were, I don't say take somebody in custody without due process if they're acting creepy, but it sounds to me, especially if he's touching young girls, like he should have already been in custody. Like he should have been picked up, brought to trial for touching young fucking girls. On the day of the shooting, Bierley uploaded a self-written song entitled Fuck 'Em All, describing his frustration with personal failures, to a public music sharing website online. Before departing for the yoga studio, he left behind a note reading part, "If I can't find one decent female to live with, I will find many indecent females to die with." So, like I say, and with the stories, there's no actual action. I mean, a person could say call to action, But this is somebody that's already on the watch list. But you have actual crimes. He's touching younger girls. And you don't just get barred from apartment buildings and bars for a reason. You've usually attacked verbally or physically and assaulted somebody. You've usually got a crime attached to you. It's just that somebody chose not to press charges. It sounds to me like there were several things out there that this guy could have been taken in on. Put in the mental hospital. Put in prison. For touching young girls. I won't say the wood chipper thing here. But for the most part, it sounds like the failure is on you guys. Alright, and with that, we're going to be done here for the day. We got to head out of here. And after this major plaque pilling, of course, we've got to come back and think about something that that restores my faith in humanity, something that I'm thankful for. And I look back to this, look back to the top of the show when we talked about the daylight savings time thing. Now, you know, I look back and I thought to this. Now, you guys expect me to be here every morning. I've been late a couple days this week as we're adjusting to the time schedule here. But I look back and I see what happened on, what was it, Monday? Monday? Yeah, Monday. When I actually did oversleep by about 15 minutes. And I get up and I start organizing articles right away. And, you know, I happen to have the live chat up because I'd opened it up ready to go so we could get started off it. And I could see the D-Live conversation over there. I could see that Arbolt and Ron were going back and forth talking about each other. I'm thankful for the fact that, especially if it's unannounced. Like if I go on vacation, it's announced, obviously, usually. But especially if it's unannounced. There are people that care enough to go back and try to figure out what went on. And, you know, some of you were texting out to KTZed and asking her to get in contact with me. Some of you guys have my number, by the way. Or other ways to contact me as well, to come back and check on me and go see what's going on with that. But the outpouring of support to see, you know, what was going on here, what happened with that, and where I was. When I was only 15 minutes behind what I usually get started at. So I'm thankful for that. That kind of restores some of my faith in humanity. And like I said, when I was out in Georgia, around Jessica Green and Britt and Steven and KTZed and Mr. Zed, I felt for the first time in a very long time, I felt wanted. I felt like people wanted me to be around. Like they wanted to be around me. You know, at some point I possibly did feel like this jerk-off who decided to go shoot up the hot yoga studio where if I can't find a decent female. Not necessarily that I want to hurt anybody, because I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to be left alone. But also, you know, you get those lonely feelings of nobody wanting you around. And to see the outpouring of support reminded me again of the same feelings I felt back in December, you know, where people actually want me to be around them. I don't get that very often anymore, but I'm thankful for it when it happens. So definitely happy for that. And with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. The music just quit. I don't know if that's on Game Chops' end or on my end. But regardless, we got to go hit the outro music anyway, so I don't know if it's allergies coming back again. I know I've had a runny nose all winter, but I don't know if it's allergies coming back again, but my nose is killing me right now as it gets warm back up in here. So let's throw some music up and let's head out of here. Or maybe we can't. Because the media player is locked up. There it goes. I must have too many tabs open. Alright, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks to everybody who came by, chatted in the live chat. Come out and hung out with us. And of course, the people that came out and said, hey, what's happening? Where are you? At 7:45 on Monday afternoon. Or Monday morning, rather. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines. We'll probably talk more about the Ukraine. Probably a little bit more about what's happening with the oil prices and what happened there. If you missed or just catching them now, head back to the top of the show because I think that's a really big one to go check out and a big one to talk about as well. Otherwise, come back and join me tomorrow for more news, more headlines, more Ukraine stuff, of course, and the last two articles that we have up here. And we will see you guys then. I'm going to get off of here. I'm going to go blow my nose. We're going to go raiding after we're done with this. So we will see you next time. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.